Welcome to the Sisters in Crime Writers Podcast. Everyone has a unique writing journey, so join us for conversations about those journeys from the writers themselves. This is Julie Henricus, the Executive Director of Sisters in Crime, and I am really delighted to welcome Sarah Smith to the podcast this week. International bestseller Sarah Smith's books are published in 15 languages. She's won the Agatha for Best Teenage Mystery, the Massachusetts Book Award for Best Teenage Novel, and numerous other honors, including the New York Times Notables and Best Book of the Year lists. She lives near Boston and has just finished a big fat fantasy set in 19th century Brazil. We're going to talk about that. She's delighted to get recognition, but Sarah's happiest when her books reach you. In her day job, she writes books about creating audiobooks with AI tools, human creativity that uses AI grunt work. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Delighted to be here with all of you. Thank you, Julie, for inviting me.
Well, I'm looking forward to having this conversation. You and I have known each other for a long time now.
Years, yeah.
But I think I'm going to start the way I always start these conversations. When did you say to yourself, I want to write a novel?
Somewhere between 4 and 11 years old. I mean, a lot of people get started early. I got started early. Did I publish that early? Oh, no. But yeah, I was always pretty sure that I wanted to tell stories.
So talk to me about the transition from, storyteller to let me write a book. Did you take classes? Was this in college? I mean, when talk to me about that, building your craft.
Okay. I started by writing scenes and got to the point where I could write individual scenes just fine, but I had real trouble with plotting. I took some writing classes in college, and then when I was in graduate school, I took a couple more writing classes. I did not do anything like go official mystery type writing classes or science fiction writing classes. I also write science fiction. That I had the huge pleasure of being around people who were also writing seriously. And around, I became a teacher myself. I taught at Tufts for a few years. And then I went into, of other things, artificial intelligence. And I was at a science fiction convention with my husband, and my husband went around, because he's a salesperson. He went around saying, my wife is looking for a writing group.
Oh.
And somebody answered him and said, my writing group is looking for a new person. And that's how I got into the Cambridge Speculative Fiction Workshop. A lot of them had already published their first novels, and I had been working on this. And I said, it's not a science fiction novel, but could I possibly submit to you this book called The Vanished Child? And I did that. They took 100 pages out of it, but mostly liked it. And I submitted it through the agent of a friend I knew. Thank you, Michael McDowell. And Jane said she would represent it, sent it to 4 people. First 3 said, we have no idea what to do with a Victorian mystery. And the 4th one said, I'll take it. And that's how The Vanished Child got published.
So I love that you found a writing group that wasn't necessarily in the genre that you were writing, but they were able to give you feedback and help you shape the story.
Mm-hmm.
And likely, as you were workshopping them, you learned a lot as well. I mean, about what was working, what wasn't working, feedback, and all of that.
Oh, yeah. Really, the best thing you can do for yourself is to get a group of your friends together and write together or read each other's work. Get into a workshop because you learn when you're writing, you learn when you get back their critiques, and you also learn as you're critiquing other people's work. Time and time again, when I was a very young pre-published writer, I would say something about a piece of writing and then say, but I'm doing that too, and stop doing it.
Right? And I love when you said they made you get rid of 100 pages, because that's not uncommon in first novels of you didn't get to the point fast enough, or there was too much backstory, and it takes somebody else. But how did you learn how to take that criticism? Because that can be very hard for a new writer.
Oh, it's crushing, isn't it? you you don't actually learn. You take the critiques and you go home with your tail between your legs and you sit underneath the desk for a couple of days, and then you say, oh well, they're probably some of that at least is right. And there are always things that you can improve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually belong to 3 writing groups now. CSFW, which I'm still in years later, and a Wednesday evening writing group that meets every week, and a group where we actually get together and write together that meets every morning.
Wow. Wow. And so this community is something you've built, and it's something that works for you in your process.
Yeah, it's so much a matter of community.
Yeah.
And having people who you know are on your side and who are doing different things that we can talk about the ways in which each of us can support each of us writing the book or doing the project they want.
And also being with other writers helps. Not only you don't feel alone that way, but nobody understands it as much as another writer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And I would imagine it also encourages you to keep going when you're stuck.
Oh, absolutely. Because no matter what, between 9 and 10 every morning, my rump is in the chair and I can't do anything else, so I might as well write. And there are times when it takes absolutely that, doesn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. And the commitment to yourself.
Yeah.
Now, your first novel was a mystery. But you've had such an interesting writing career, Sarah. So let's talk about how ideas for you become this would be an interesting book. I talk about the gravitational pull of an idea. You might read something, you might meet someone, and you're curious, and then you sort of build a world in your mind, think, okay, that can take care of a book. But when you write, you don't just write mysteries. You've also, you've written fantasy, you've written science fiction. So you write all sorts of things. So talk to me about that, shaping an idea and deciding what that book's going to be.
Well, I think for a lot of us, it's not just one idea, it's 3 or 4.
Right.
And I had, for instance, with Crimes and Survivors, I had the idea for years of writing a book about Titanic. And I had a perfectly good idea of what this book was going to be about. It was going to be about someone who was a friend of Ryston and Perdita, my series detectives. And she had found out that her grandfather may have been passing for white. So that was the first idea. The second idea was, as I was writing the first scenes of this, every time this character appeared, the whole book went dead.
Mm.
And I thought to myself, why do they care? Why is this woman, her name was Callie Church, and you won't find her in the book. Why does this woman even talk to them about this issue? And then I realized who the character had to be, who had found out about her grandfather possibly passing for white. Scared me more than anything. And I could do a spoiler, or I could
Well,
not.
you don't have to go. You can allude to it, but talk to me about that being afraid of what you're thinking about and going forward.
Well, this was a major character, a major continuing character whom I knew, and I didn't know that about her.
Hmm.
And she didn't know it about herself. And it basically completely blew up her life. And she has brothers and sisters, she has parents, she has a whole family, she has a child. And is she going to just put this in the closet and forget about it? Or is she going to at least investigate?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a very scary idea. But I still had my idea about going on the Titanic. Because Titanic, And I was reading around and reading around. And if I were a person of color, I would have known this immediately. But it took me 2 years of research to have anyone mention the fact that Titanic was a segregated ship. There were supposedly no Black people on Titanic.
Oh.
There were actually 4 on a baby who wasn't born yet. And when I realized this, I thought, oh, just going on this ship, just going on Titanic is so transgressive. And as she goes on Titanic, when it means that she is committing a major social crime, oh, that's a book.
Interesting. So I was just talking to somebody else about historical fiction. The amount of research you need to do in order to get it right. About Titanic too. I mean, people know about Titanic. So, you're going to tell a story, but it's got to sort of be rooted in fact. Was that nerve-wracking for you, sort of figuring out, doing enough research that you could go forth with confidence?
No, that was catnip. I mean, you are looking at the person who bet the movie of Titanic 4 times. The last time, the super extra special version with all of the extra materials, and got to know the people who were doing Titanic Honor and Glory specifically so I could get the tiles right.
Yeah.
You can do too much of that stuff. That if you're drawn towards historical fiction, and obviously I am, and lyrical and faraway fiction, and I just love the idea of getting the details right. And now it's so easy because of the internet. I was recently, well, all right, I'll embarrass us all. I was recently writing a scene in which a man is using a urinal. And I realized that this is something, being a woman, that I might have to research. And it turns out there is a full description. In fact, there are several, but I only used one. A full description of what you have to do to use a urinal without getting it all over the place. Now I have embarrassed us all.
Well, I mean, this is sort of part of research and things to do. And, you can make it up, but that actually wouldn't be helpful because
And out of research comes ideas.
Right. But when you decided to write the Titanic book through a lens of, woman of color, this conversation, talk to me about what you did in order to make sure that you were telling that story accurately and thoughtfully as you're going forward, because that's a heck of a point of view and a story, and again an untold story. I didn't realize all of these things that you had mentioned, but talk to me about your journey in making sure you did that right.
Well, first of all, I got in touch with some of my friends who are women of color, and talked to them about this. And Barbara Neely said, you can do this, you can research it. And I thought to myself, oh, did I? You have faith, I'm not sure I do. But also, she's not quite a woman of color. She's a white woman who has suddenly been put in this new position, which is horrible and embarrassing and unclear for everybody. And we can do horrible and embarrassing and unclear because we're writers. And also, I have members of the family who are kind of between being white and being black. And I was taking a lot from their experiences.
Yeah. And in 1914, I should know off the top of my head.
1912.
1912. I mean, that's also a different time period, and what it just the classes on the Titanic, and who, the lower classes, the steerage folks who just didn't even have an opportunity to get in a boat. I mean, they were immediately like, no, you don't get a chance.
Right.
I mean, there's so much social history involved with that as well.
Oh, yes. So many things. She ends up on the deck as the last boats are going, and she's surrounded by people from third class who were just let out of the lower decks. And she survives. Spoiler, she gets to New York. If her situation were known, she's married to a white man. Of course she is, because she thought of herself as white. Her marriage would be illegal, and she's friends with a woman who is black, looks white, and had started passing for white as something like 20 to 25,000 people a year did in the 19 teens, because choice between being somebody who couldn't go into many of the restaurants in New York, couldn't go into most of the hotels, and somebody who could go as far as their talents and their ingenuity could take them. For a lot of people, it was a really simple choice.
Yeah, I think the complications of the human condition and why, and the fact that people made those choices and why, is such an important something to remember, something to acknowledge.
People tell you, write what you know, and I think in some ways that's just a horrible thing to say. Write what you want to know, but write what you know about people's feelings of inadequacy and joy and love and fear. And those feelings come out of many, many different circumstances.
So fascinating way into this Titanic story, and the research you did. And again, we've known each other for a long time, both members of Sisters in Crime New England, so have seen each other at meetings and heard about projects at different places. But you do a lot of research, or I'm not going to say Well, I'm going to say complicated. You take a story and just add layers. And I think it's because of your curiosity and the way your brain works. It's like, let me write about Shakespeare and who was William Shakespeare and really dive in, but tell a mystery at the same time.
Oh, you want to know the story behind that?
Sure. I love that book.
Thank you. Because that wasn't the book I started out to write. Important piece of writing advice: be lucky. So I had a friend who was a dyed in the wool Oxfordian. That is, she thought that the Earl of Oxford wrote Shakespeare. And I had gone to Harvard, and I said, "Why, Joanna, this is not true. Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare." Joanna used to be the beauty editor of Vogue. So Joanna said, "Look out the window in 5 minutes." And in 5 minutes, this taxi drives up to the house with 2 large bags of books about the Oxfordian controversy in it. Joanna was marvelous. I miss her. But I had got as far as thinking I would write a little cozy academic mystery about why people thought that Shakespeare wasn't Shakespeare. All of those silly people who wear tinfoil hats. And I was over in England because one of my books was being published in England. And I had a couple of days between the publicity tour I was doing and a conference I was going to. And I went to the British Library because I wanted to read about this guy, Anthony Mundy, who was going to play a role in the book, which was not that then named Chasing Shakespeare's. In fact, it wasn't named anything. And towards the end of the last day, I came across this book that was 3 books bound together. And 2 of them had Oxfordian connections. And I really brought out the book for those 2 books. And then there was this third thing called The Pain of Pleasure, which was supposed to have been written by Monday, and I just didn't have time to read it. I thought, okay, I'll give it back. I didn't read it. No, I'll see if they'll Xerox it for me. And the British Library, being the British Library, can Xerox anything, including the original 10 Commandments. I don't know. They have wonderful machines. So I paid my £17, and I said, I'll come back and get it. Came back and got it, and read it, and realized that it was not by Anthony Mundy, that it was by this completely different person who had many of the attributes of early Shakespeare. Ooh, says I to myself. And the thing was dated 1585 in somebody's handwriting. It had no cover. It had no title page. And there was a second copy at the university, at Cambridge University. I got a friend at my British publisher to go and Xerox the title page. Meanwhile, I'm completely committed to the idea that this is by Shakespeare. And it comes back, and it's dated 1580. So who's writing Shakespeare when Shakespeare is down in Stratford and he's 16? Ooh. Again, that's one of those compound ideas that really make at least my little writing guys in the basement sit up and take notice. And I combined that with a guy who was really, really committed with all of his heart to Shakespeare being Shakespeare. Because if Shakespeare got out of Stratford, then Joe Roper can get out of rural Maine, and he can become a Shakespeare biographer, which is exactly what he wants with his entire heart.
Yeah, yeah.
Gonna have troubles, Joe.
So as you're doing research and curiosity is moving you forward, let's talk about how you write. Do you wait till it's clear? Do you plot in advance? Do you start a book thinking it's going to be one thing? If it turns into something else, you pull back and start again? Or talk to me about your writing process.
Yes, I do those. And I have this thing that I do to fool myself. I do an outline. And the outline starts out with all of the scenes that I can see in my head and I'd really like to write. So I just dump them into Scribner. And at this point, I'm not writing at all, I'm just outlining. And then I shuffle them around till they sort of begin looking like a book and think about things like 3-act structure and this and that and the other thing, and who's going to be so badly destroyed by this particular scene that they have to be the point of view character, and all of the structural things that it's relatively easy to think about. So I have this outline, and I start writing this book, and then at some point, and this is practically inevitable, the characters get together and say, you were going to have us do something in this scene. Not going to happen. And then we get together in the writing room. I think of the writing room as being a perfectly featureless white room, white beds, white ceiling, white floor, no windows, and all of the characters are on fairly uncomfortable metal folding chairs. And we sit there, and I say to them, why don't you learn to do this? Seems like a perfectly sensible thing to me. And eventually they tell me. And then I go back and make notes on the outline and then write the book the way they tell me to. So kind of plantser.
Yeah.
All of those people who think that, say that they're in control of their characters, I only wish.
Yes. Do you ever start a project thinking it's going to be a mystery and it ends up being a different genre? Or, when you start a project, you sort of have a sense of what the spine of the story is going to be so that you can move forward?
I always know the beginning and the end. I know what they're trying to get. And I'm usually right about that. Have I ever changed something from being science fiction to mystery? No, but in this thing that I'm just finishing up, I didn't think that ghosts would show up, and ghosts show up.
Well, the publishing world, the writing world seems to be very Sarah Smith friendly to me right now because it is about mashing up or bringing in elements or it's a very creative time, I think, for writers. Now, publishing is its own journey and we could talk about that, but for writers, they are taking elements of different things and putting them together. So you had mentioned to me before we started recording that your current work in progress is a fantasy, but bringing in paranormal and other elements, that's okay right now. I mean, in the world, it's people are enjoying that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the reason it's so successful and we're feeling so open and free in a way as writers is the other side of it's being a really hard time for writers. People are losing their series. Publishing houses are shutting down or they're consolidating, and there is a side of publishing, and it tends to be associated with the more traditional publishing houses, although a lot of people in those more traditional publishing houses are just dying to take a chance on something new and interesting.
Yes.
And that if there isn't the traditional publishing house route, there's the independent publishing and self-publishing route. One of the best things my agent, Esmond Harmsworth, ever said to me was, that is Evitas, which is the company that represents me, we get most of our profit from subrights. If you want to publish a book by yourself, we will still represent the subrights and we will still get most of our money. This was after everybody in the traditional publishing world looked at this book in which I had changed the race of a major character, a major continuing series character, and said, so I did publish it as a self-published book. And I've got a lot of thank you notes from people who are, in the most complete sense, mixed race, who have their own family story, and who have never heard that story told before.
And in the context of this huge historical fact too. I mean, that's part of the hook. So this is fascinating to me. You took a series character, you decided to go indie with this book and do it yourself. But your agent said, great, we'll sell the subrights.
Yeah.
Which is, so subrights, we talked about this on different webinars for Sisters in Crime. This is something folks need to think about. If you're going to sell, get assigned a traditional publishing contract, make sure your subrights are protected.
Absolutely.
Or that publisher can actually sell them, because this is a tremendous source of revenue for some folks, and you don't want to tie up your rights.
Absolutely. There is an essential resource for writers called Writer Beware.
Yes.
Which is actually run through the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, but it's equally good for mystery writers.
Yes.
And what Victoria says over and over and over is, be careful of your subrights. Do not let people have exclusives forever. Don't let them have subrights if they're not going to exploit them in a way that's profitable for you as well as for them. And do not ever, ever, ever give away your intellectual property.
Yes. And subrights can be foreign rights, it can be audio, it can be potential web series or network series, whatever. It can be, some contracts want you to sign away rights for things that aren't even existing yet. So this is why agents could be helpful. The Authors Guild will also look at contracts for their members, but just make sure you're taking care of yourself and you're covering yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the business side. And when you're indie publishing, you're your own publisher. But again, as you're talking about, that doesn't mean that you can't partner with people to help you sell subrights or to figure out other parts of it. Yeah.
And if you feel you like this character and you want to do something with this character, even if people say this is not a viable project, go ahead. I think of the wonderful story about Charlene Harris, who brought Sookie Stackhouse to her agent, who shall remain nameless because he has apologized personally since. He said, this is not a project. This is not real. And she had done well enough. She said, I want to publish this book. And he said, well, right. And we have heard of Sookie Stackhouse, haven't we?
Yeah. And that was for her a departure. She'd had successful series and things, but she went out on a limb and said, yeah, I want to write about vampires. I mean, and this was before or right when, but this wasn't as a result of a trend. She was at the forefront of a lot of that. Yeah.
And this happens sometimes, even within a series. I have had the pleasure of talking with Lois McMaster Bujold about her book Memory, in which she takes one of the two major characters of her series and kills him off. And I've talked with Lawrence Black about When the Sacred Gin Mill Closes, in which he takes one of those alcoholic, semi-alcoholic detectives living bitterly and divorced in New York, and he introduces him to AA. And for both of these were a big kick in right in the guts of the series. And neither one of them, neither author was encouraged to publish those books.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they completely transformed the series, and the series has gone on.
Yeah. And that's such a great way of framing choices and age. Like, as a writer, you're only in control of your writing. Publishing is its own beast. And if you're indie, you're in a little bit more control, but you're also running a business. You've got to make sure you're doing it. But if you're writing a series, but you feel as a writer, you need to reboot it somehow. Those were two really big reboots. I mean, that's not just it's like, all right, let's completely reboot this. But as a writer, it probably re-energized them in figuring out what to do next.
Sometimes they're wrong and you're right.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And you have to have faith in yourself as a writer. Well, and you care more about your books than anyone else. Which is, so talk to me about this project that you're working on now that, again, we started to talk about, but it's huge. You're in the end zone of, I don't know, first draft, or is this that, where are you as far as drafts go?
I'm doing the first draft of the last scene, and many scenes before have had multiple drafts.
Is that how do you go back and revise as you're writing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said you've got how many thousand words on this work in progress?
You honestly don't want to know, because it's at least a trilogy. It's 350,000 words long.
Wow. Wow.
When you get the first time you write something in Scrivener, you kind of lose track of how many pages you've written. Well, I spectacularly lost track.
Because you just kept adding scenes and let's add this, and then later I'm going to do this, and then.
It was all good stuff, and it was written fairly tightly, but there was a lot of stuff happening, and I just sort of forgot to count pages.
But Sarah, maybe if you'd counted pages, you would have lost some wonderful stuff. So, if you're going to make this into a trilogy, and that's actually, 120,000 words, that's very, that's normal. But have you already thought about how you're going to split the trilogy, or what's?
Yeah.
Is that would break my brain a little bit. It's like, okay, now I've got to make sure I'm doing 3 arcs that are complete, but the story can continue, because in a trilogy, you got to be sort of satisfied, but want to read the next one.
Well, since it was completely not planned as more than a single book, I'll tell you a trick. I figured out how many words there were in each chunk of the book, and I put it in a spreadsheet. All right, if we divide it this way, how many words are in these 8 chunks that make the first volume? And if we do, say, 4 volumes, how many words are in these 7 chunks that make the first volume? And that was my completely weird way of splitting the book.
Well, but that's also that's structure stuff, right? I mean, sometimes math, the three-act structure, which is the fairly simple, basic structure, that's still math. I mean, it's still like a quarter of the way
Yep.
through, something happens, halfway through, three-quarters of the way through, and by 90%, you're wrapping it up. I mean, it's percentages.
Yeah. And I'm probably going to have to go back and make things shorter, make things longer, not longer. I don't know, longer. Make things shorter, to make the arcs come out in a comfortable way for the reader.
You've been writing for a long time, but this is writing, a huge fantasy trilogy is to the nth degree of world building and making up rules, because it doesn't make the rules are yours, but also then making sure you're consistently following the rules throughout. So if dragons can only do X, Y, or Z, you can't have them do A, B, and C in the third volume.
Right.
Or you can, but you'd need to explain it, or you're going to piss your readers off really badly. Because we've all had those books. It's like, okay, wait, what did
Yes.
you do?
Which is why we spend 15 minutes trying to find out when the automatic transmission was invented.
Yes, yes, yes. And just to make sure it's gonna.
Just to make sure the details are right.
And is this book set in? Okay, you told it it's 19th century. Is that right? 19th century.
Part of it is set in Brazil in around 1850, and part of it is, the last part is set 100 years later, 1953 in New York. Only it's not named New York anymore because changes.
And so this is a huge. How long did this take you? How long were you thinking about it, and then how long did it take you to get this draft?
It took about, I would say, 4 years to do the whole thing, which is not so bad.
Not so bad.
90K a year. Not bad
And-
for me. I write slow.
And do you, when you're writing one thing, is that it? Or could you write a short story at the same time, or work on this? Or it's like you're just, okay, so you can work on other projects at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And are you, you're working on the edits and everything else. I mean, what's the dream for the book? Do you have beta readers who are going to look this over to help you figure out the pitch and all the rest of it?
Yeah. Yeah, I have alpha readers, I have beta readers. The beta readers have already gone through most of it. And then I talk to my agent and say, hey, you remember that horrible chunk of stuff I was going to lay onto you? Incoming.
But again, right now, this is an interesting time for books of that are combining worlds and genres. So one never knows what can happen. Yeah. But you certainly don't make your writing life easy on yourself, do you, Sarah?
It's the sort of thing I like to write, which is, and I hope it's the sort of thing people like to read. Sort of thing I like to read.
Yeah. So as we're wrapping this up a little bit, talk to me about what you wish you'd known about, writing, but also publishing. I mean, because they are two different journeys. Or what might be helpful for folks who are listening to this and sort of inspired or figuring things out or stuck mid-career, because you've had a long career. But that takes work and not giving up. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you've been continuing to be published for a long time, and that's not easy.
It is important to do marketing, but I had an interesting moment with one of my editors when they just published one of my books, and they put an ad in the New York Times. Very, very nice ad about this thing. How much did this piece of marketing cost? And it was $17,000. And I asked, how much difference will it make in the number of books that are sold? They had no idea.
Mm.
And publishers can do a little bit better data mining now, but really, people don't have a very good idea of what marketing works.
Yeah.
So you might as well do the marketing that you enjoy, the marketing that will not get in the way of your marketing that will not get it, the marketing that will not get in the way of your writing, and the marketing that will make you feel good about yourself, even if it doesn't do anything, because there are absolutely no guarantees of anything.
Yeah. That's such a great thing to say. And also the algorithms and everything else change regularly, so that you may build a platform on X, Y, or Z social media and then it goes sideways, or, so it's really one-on-one. It's still, talking about your book and being happy to talk about your book, and then having other people talk about your book is
Yeah,
such an effective
yeah,
way of marketing. Yeah,
yes,
yeah. And you need to love your books. You need to be
yeah,
thrilled, right?
yes. Take some of your pay in fun.
Yeah. So I love that you're working on the last scene of this trilogy, and you'll get it polished and then get it to folks to see what happens. Is there, as you're doing this slog, which I can't even imagine, and slog may not be the kindest word, but that's I'm sure what it feels like sometimes, like, let's just get it over the finish line.
I actually like rewriting.
Oh, so you're going to be in the happy place now.
I'm going to be
But
in the happy place while I'm doing the research for the new book.
so that was what I was going to ask you. Do you have the characters in the White Room who are saying to you, okay, so here's the new idea that you're sort of noodling?
And the series is coming back with Ryston and Perdita, and they are going to be involved in a mystery connected with the Treaty of Versailles,
Oh, wow.
as the aftermath of the First World War is deciding the kind of 20th century we'll have.
Yes. Yes. So now, is that a period of time that is, those early teens? Is that a time that just calls to you, or that you're enjoying wrestling with?
And I'm going to have to do more research on it. But the whole idea that a group of guys can get together in an old royal palace in France and decide what's happening in Africa,
I know.
that's interesting.
That is interesting. That is interesting.
And because of some of the decisions that they made, we have wars now.
Yeah. Yes. And the aftermath of that war was also affected so many things. I mean, and the horrors of it. And again, I was talking to somebody else about, reading books written in that period, reading fiction written in that period, so you get a sense of the world, is so enlightening, because it was a very hard, all wars are hard, but it was a brutal war for Europe. I mean, just brutal. But you're right. I mean, the fact that the decisions these folks made impacted the entire world is kind of extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, thank you for a great conversation and an interesting conversation. I will put in the show notes a link to Writer Beware, because folks should read that. Victoria Strauss is the person who pulls it together and does such a service to the writing community by publishing that blog, because it's more and more things are going on in this world. But thank you so much. This was a great conversation.
Thank you. This was great.
Best of luck. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for being with us today. Sisters in Crime is about community. We were founded to advocate for women crime writers, and we continue that mission by fighting for equity in the crime writing community. Sisters in Crime is an international, inclusive organization for all who write and love crime fiction, mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Join us at sistersincrime.org and make sure you subscribe to this podcast.